Welcome to another edition of First Chapter Friday. My name is Lucy, and the book that I'm going to be reading from today is called The Size of the Truth by Andrew Smith. And this is I just loved this book. You can see I marked up some pages. There were just really great, heartwarming passages. It was funny. It had all sorts of great stuff in it. It's the story of Sam Abernathy, and it starts out when he's 4 years old, and he falls into a well in his hometown in Texas. He gets out of that well. That's not a spoiler alert because it happens right away. But he's still known forever in his town as the boy who fell into the well. So we go back and forth between 4-year-old Sam in the well, and those chapters get really interesting, really funny, kind of a little James and the Giant Peach vibe going on there. He ends up meeting some interesting creatures in the well. And then we go to Sam in middle school. Sam should be in 6th grade, but his parents have advanced him to 8th grade, which is difficult because he is the size of a 6th grader in 8th grade. So he's just not necessarily with his friends, and he's with these bigger kids. So middle school is kind of hard. On top of that, his father really wants Sam to go into math and science and has this dream of Sam going to MIT. The dream is so big that Sam can't tell his father what he really wants to do, which is be a professional chef, something that he's very good at. And so that is one of the themes that runs throughout the book, living up to your parents' dreams for you and deciding to follow through on what your own dreams are. And it is interesting to see how sometimes parents can think that the dreams that they have for you are in fact your dreams when you've been thinking something differently all along. So that happens with multiple characters in the book. The part of this book that I loved the most was an unexpected friendship that crops up between Sam and someone at his school who he thinks is the enemy. You know, people aren't what you think they are, and that this book wants to tell you that again and again and again. So there are these moments, and this is what I flagged with my Post-its, but just the nicest moments and thoughts about friendship and what it means and how important it is, and also how people can be brave in small acts. We always look to our heroes to be doing these big things, these larger than life things, but sometimes heroes can be the people who are just doing something very brave in their daily life, or just sometimes being in their daily life, and that's brave enough. So that is another big part of this book, and it's got humor. It's got this heartwarming friendship. It has this very real idea of like your parents wanting something for you and you wanting something else for yourself, and how do you tell them that? So there's so much going on in this book, and I love the way it flipped back and forth between Sam in the well and Sam in middle school. And Sam has a very dry sense of humor that runs throughout the entire book. So that is very enjoyable as well. And I hope that you read it. I'm going to read you the first chapter, which will give you a little bit of Sam in the well, but you're definitely going to want to read on from there to get the full story. So I will start with chapter 1 of The Size of the Truth by Andrew Smith. And before I read chapter 1, I will read the dedication to you because it just goes along those lines of friendship that I was talking about. To Kelly Milner Halls, who is one of the biggest reasons I write about friendship. And Andrew Smith does write about friendship really well. So the first chapter is called The First Day in the Hole. That's actually the first section. First chapter is called Being Alone in the Dark in a Hole on Thanksgiving Day is Not Much Fun. Or, Oh Well. This all starts with my first enormous truth, which was a hole. When I was 4 years old on Thanksgiving Day, I fell into a very deep, very small hole. There were things in that hole, things besides just me and dirt. Some people can't remember anything at all from when they were 4 years old. It seems like most people's memories begin when they're in kindergarten or first grade. I can remember things that happened to me when I was only 2. For example, I remember the first time I met Kareem, just after he and his family moved into the house down the road from ours. That happened when I was 2. But for years, I could not remember what happened to me when I fell into that hole. Now I can. People say I'm smart. It's not my fault though. I've never tried to be smart. To be honest, which is something I always try to be, I stopped being able to talk after I got out of the hole. So I started school late when I was 7. It was like being in a race where every other boy and girl had a 2-year-old head start on me. At least Kareem always stuck with me until we couldn't stick anymore. The hole I fell into was an old well. In Blue Creek, Texas, which is where I live, everyone calls the hole an abandoned well, but that's a strange way to describe a well. Nobody ever lived there and then moved out of it. It wasn't a former pet like a dog someone leaves out in the desert because they can't take care of it anymore. So it's hard for me to understand how a well can be abandoned. What I fell into was a hole that nobody bothered to point out to me was still there and was also still a hole, a very deep one. That day, Kareem and I were running around in the woods behind his house with some older boys from the neighborhood, playing a game called Spud with a soccer ball that had gone flat. If this older kid named James Jenkins, who nobody liked and everyone was afraid of, hadn't thrown the ball so high before Kareem could catch it and yell Spud, I would not have taken that last step, which wasn't a step, to be honest, since planet Earth was not beneath my foot, and I would not have been swallowed up by a hole. But that's what happened, and I fell. I felt my left shoe come off. Everything went dark. Somewhere above me, Kareem yelled, Spud! And I kept falling. As scary as falling into an abandoned well might sound when you aren't in the middle of falling into one, I remember feeling far more confused than frightened as I slipped farther and farther down beneath the surface of Texas. Falling seemed to take forever. I hit things and dirt got into my mouth and nose, my jeans twisted around, and my t-shirt got pulled up around my shoulders. Somehow, my feet ended up above me and my head pointed down. As I fell, I worried about Mom and Dad and how they were going to be mad at me. I stopped tumbling. Everything smelled and tasted like dirt. And I was upside down, lying like a capital J, looking up at my feet and a fist-sized patch of blue, which would have been the afternoon sky above the hole I fell through. I spit mud out of my mouth. I yelled, hey! I tried to move, to pull myself up. Kareem, hey! Then the walls around my shoulders seemed to widen out and I fell again. The second trip was shorter than the first, and this time I hit what must have been the flat bottom of the well. I lay on my sides with my arms curled around my head. Little bits of dirt and pebbles sprinkled down on me from the walls above. It sounded like rain. I shut my eyes. That was when I started being much more scared than confused. It was also when I started to cry, which made mudslides all over my face. When you're 4, it isn't really a big deal if you cry, right? I mean, unlike when you're a boy in middle school, when it becomes a completely different issue with all kinds of costly consequences. So I'm not embarrassed to say I cried, but let me make it clear. I was 4, and I was at the bottom of a very deep hole. I didn't think I was hurt, but I wasn't really sure either. I lay there for so long, just holding my head and trying to think about what had happened to me and why this hole was here in the first place. But nothing made much sense. I was completely alone. It was Thanksgiving Day, and Mom and Dad were going to be so mad at me. I may have gone to sleep. So that is the end of chapter 1 of The Size of the Truth by Andrew Smith. And it makes it sound like it's a very harrowing tale. Here we have Sam falling in this well. But right away in the next chapter, which is called How to Prove You're a Unicorn, Sam meets a very unusual creature in the well who turns out to be very funny. And the book gets humorous right away. So it sort of goes back and forth between these serious issues and this humor. And it's just a great story. It's heartwarming, it's funny, it's just so good. And I hope that you read it. I hope you get introduced to Sam Abernathy. He's a great character. So that's The Size of the Truth by Andrew Smith.